Being poor sucks, but it used to suck a lot worse. So let's take a look at exactly how bad it sucked in every era. Stone Age. This is a period that goes on for millions of years. This era presents a fascinating paradox. Everyone was poor, yet no one was considered impoverished. How could this be? In Stone Age societies, the idea of wealth accumulation was foreign. Hunter-gatherer groups lived day by day. They focused on survival rather than amassing possessions. Their lives revolved around securing basic necessities: food, water, and shelter. Each day brought new challenges. It was a time of hunting game and gathering edible plants, then finding safe places to rest. The struggle for survival was a constant reality. This period sucked for everyone. The Stone Age people had to survive, so I guess being poor meant unalive. They crafted simple tools from stone, wood, and bone to aid in their daily tasks. These tools were essential for hunting, preparing food, and creating basic shelters. Despite these hardships, Stone Age communities developed strong social bonds. They shared resources and worked together to overcome challenges. This communal way of life helped mitigate individual hardship. Yeah, it was the simple life. Campfires, living off the land, living every waking second in fear of being hunted down by a saber-toothed tiger. The simple life. There are two reasons why people at this time were all poor. First, they kept moving, so accumulating materials would make their nomadic life hard. Second, they all shared whatever they could get. Those commies. If one person struggled to find food, others in the group would share their findings. This cooperative approach ensured the survival of the entire community. The absence of permanent settlements meant the Stone Age people were always on the move. They followed animal mitigations and sought out areas with abundant plant life. In most cases, Stone Age societies were egalitarian. Leadership roles were often based on skill and experience. You're probably confused right now, so let me explain something. In this age, everyone was poor by modern-day standards, but no one thought so. It was a time of community and harmony. As the name suggests, stone was a crucial material in this era. It was used to create tools, weapons, and even rudimentary art. The ability to work with stone was highly valued. Skilled toolmakers were important members of the community. The Stone Age way of life persisted for an incredibly long time. It shaped human behavior and social structures. So where did the shifts start happening? And what brought about the modern concept of poverty? You're about to find out. This transition marked the end of an era where poverty, as we understand it today, simply did not exist. Bronze Age, 3300 to 1200 BC. Here, we witness a dramatic shift in human society. This would forever change the concept of poverty. It was this period that metalworking, particularly with bronze, was discovered. It ushered in an era of unprecedented technological advancement. But with this progress came a new challenge: the birth of social classes and wealth inequality. The Bronze Age, which began around 3300 BC, marked a turning point in human history. For the first time, people could create durable tools and weapons from metal. This new technology required specialized skills and access to rare resources. This gave birth to the first new elite class, the metalworkers. Soon, this class strangely shifted. The metalworkers could produce superior tools and weapons. This gave them an edge in agriculture, hunting, and warfare. This expertise allowed them to accumulate wealth and power. And that sets them apart from the rest of the society. Meanwhile, the majority of the population continued to work as farmers and laborers. These individuals often struggled to meet their basic needs. They were working long hours in the fields or performing manual labor. The gap between the elite metalworkers and the common people grew wider. This created a clear distinction between the haves and the have-nots. Have you ever wondered where the concept of debt came from? I've got you covered. It was in this era. This period saw the beginnings of more complex economic systems. As trade networks expanded, the concept of debt emerged. Farmers might borrow seeds or tools from wealthier individuals. They would promise to repay with a portion of their harvest. If for some reason they could not pay, they risked falling into a cycle of debt. This could lead to indentured servitude. indentured servitude became a common practice during the Bronze Age. The system often trapped people in poverty for generations. This is because children inherited their parents' debts and obligations. The Bronze Age also saw the rise of the first cities and early forms of government. In most cases, the poor never stood a chance to redeem themselves. But if you thought that was bad, it goes downhill from there. Iron Age, 800 to 100 BC. The discovery of iron marked a significant shift in human history. However, its impact on poverty was far from straightforward. The introduction of iron tools revolutionized agriculture, allowing for more efficient farming practices. Iron plows could break through tougher soil, expanding the areas suitable for cultivation. This increased food production and supported larger populations. So, what was it like to be poor in this era? Being poor meant that you were still servicing your family's debt. Wealthy landowners would receive proper tools first. They could produce more crops with less labor, widening the gap between the rich and the poor. Many small farmers struggled to compete. They often found themselves working as laborers on larger estates. Remember the advantages metalworking came with? Well, this changed. As urban centers grew, a new class of poor craftsmen emerged. These skilled workers produced iron tools and weapons. Sadly, they lived in cramped, unsanitary conditions. They faced long hours of physically demanding work in dangerous environments. They had little protection from accidents or illness. This hasn't changed much, has it? The Iron Age also saw the rise of more complex trade networks. This widened the social gap significantly. Merchants could purchase products from farmers and traders. Initially, it started fairly, but the more trade networks improved, the worse it got. The Iron Age brought significant changes to warfare as well. Iron weapons were stronger and more durable than their bronze counterparts. This led to the formation of powerful armies, often controlled by wealthy elites. And with it came some form of manipulation. Poor people would join these armies and risk their lives. The hope was that joining the army would improve their social status. This is where the concept of knighthood in certain communities came from. As the Iron Age progressed, the concept of poverty became more defined. The stark contrast between the lives of the wealthy and the poor became apparent. Funny thing is, the world benefited greatly from the Iron Age. Medieval era, 4076 to 1400 AD. Did you know that at a time, being poor was considered a crime? The medieval time was without a doubt the worst time in history. This is when ideologies, philosophies, and brainiacs started shining. For example, in medieval Europe, the Christian church emerged. It played a central role in shaping attitudes towards poverty. The concept of holy poverty emerged. It idealized a life of material deprivation as a path to spiritual enlightenment. Monks and nuns took vows of poverty. They renounced worldly possessions in pursuit of a closer connection to God. This idea spread beyond the monastery walls, influencing how society viewed the poor. Being poor became glorified. But was it really? The reality of poverty during this time was far from virtuous. Most people lived in constant struggle, facing hunger, disease, and harsh living conditions. The feudal system created a rigid social hierarchy. Peasants and serfs were at the bottom. They were often trapped in a cycle of poverty with little hope for improvement. As cities grew and populations increased, attitudes towards the poor began to shift. Authorities started to view poverty as a threat to social order. Laws against vagrancy and begging became increasingly common and harsh. In England, the Statute of Labours of 1351 made it a crime for able-bodied individuals to refuse work. It was also a crime to ask for higher wages. Punishments for these offenses could include imprisonment, branding, or even execution. Poor women faced unique challenges in medieval society. With limited job opportunities and legal rights, many found themselves in precarious situations. Widows, in particular, often struggled to support themselves and their children. Some turned to prostitution as a means of survival. Yes, this is where the oldest profession took root. Sadly, they would face both social stigma and legal persecution. This is also the period when giving relief started. The idea of charity and helping the poor and the sick. There was a medieval view of poverty as both a virtue and a crime. This created a complex and often contradictory approach to addressing destitution. This dual perception would continue to influence attitudes towards the poor well into the modern era. It would shape social policies and cultural attitudes that still resonate today. Early modern era, 15 to 1800s. The dawn of the 16th century brings new approaches to addressing the needs of the poor. This marked a transition from religious charity to government responsibility. In England, the Poor Laws emerge. These laws establish a framework for providing relief to those in need. One of the most notable features of the Poor Laws is the establishment of workhouses. These institutions were also known as poorhouses. They became a central element in the new system of poor relief. Workhouses provided shelter, food, and work for those unable to support themselves. This seems like a saving grace, right? Sadly, conditions in workhouses were notoriously harsh. They operated on the principle of less eligibility. In short, life inside the workhouse should be worse than the poorest living conditions outside. This approach aimed to discourage people from seeking assistance unless absolutely necessary. Workhouse residents faced strict rules, meager food ratios, and grueling labor. Families entering workhouses were often separated. Men, women, and children were assigned to different areas. The work itself is typically monotonous and physically demanding. For example, breaking stones or picking oakum, unraveling old ropes. Education for children in workhouses was minimal. It focused primarily on religious instruction and basic skills. The world kept growing, and along with it came the Industrial Revolution. New forms of urban poverty emerge. The rapid growth of cities creates overcrowded slums. This brings about the working class families. Factory workers face long hours, dangerous working conditions, and low wages. This industrialization also leads to periodic economic downturns. The result is widespread unemployment and increased demand for poor relief. The workhouse system, already strained, struggles to cope with these new challenges. Critics begin to question the effectiveness and humanity of the Poor Laws. The stage is set for future reforms in poverty management. Modern era, 1800 to present. As we enter the modern era, we encounter a perplexing phenomena: the paradox of plenty. Despite unprecedented global wealth and technological advancements, poverty persists on a massive scale. The stark contrast between abundance and scarcity challenges our understanding of progress. It also raises important questions about the nature of modern society. In the 21st century, the world produces more food, goods, and services than ever before. Global GDP has skyrocketed, and living standards have improved for millions. Yet, a significant part of the world's population still struggles to meet basic needs. This paradox highlights the complex interplay between economic growth and wealth distribution. Modern social welfare systems have emerged as a response to persistent poverty. These systems include programs like unemployment benefits, food assistance, and subsidized housing. They aim to provide a safety net for those in need. In many developed countries, these programs have helped reduce extreme poverty. Compared to historical examples, modern poverty often looks quite different. A person considered poor in a wealthy nation today might own a smartphone. They have access to clean water and electricity. These are luxuries unavailable to even the wealthiest individuals centuries ago. Yet, modern poverty brings its own set of challenges. The high cost of living in urban areas, the need for expensive education and training to compete in the job market, and the psychological stress of inequality in the age of social media. The persistence of poverty in an era of abundance highlights ongoing system issues. Which era do you think poverty was worse? Thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Watch this video on every dumb trend of the decade explained.